Hello and welcome to Journalists Hangout UK, the show where we discuss issues both African and worldwide, which are affecting the continent. And we look at how these issues are seen at home and in the African diaspora. I'm Priscilla Wikbo, and I'm pleased to welcome our panel. Tete Kofi, journalist and broadcaster. Ayo Johnson, journalist and specialist in African affairs. And Vuyisiwa Ubongwana, a broadcaster. So, ladies and gentlemen, it's been a very, very interesting week in London. The reports are that London has overtaken New York when it comes to the killings on our streets. Let me come to you first, Vuyisiwa. It's been reported to date, I think we have about 51 or so killings so far, and it appears the numbers are rising.
Well, this is something that's always been in the headlines intermittently on and off, but it seems to have got to a critical point where there has to be some intelligent assessment on solutions, which have always been avoided for some reason or other. But at my perspective as a parent to a young man who has been stabbed and actually managed to survive the ordeal, I look back on it and I think, where are the community development initiatives that lock young people into constructive activity? That's what's missing.
Okay, I'm going to come to that in a moment. But Ayo, you know, I think it was yesterday, 2 days ago, we heard it was 47. And then here we are today, it's now 51. And it just seems to just keep escalating. When you heard the numbers going up, what were you thinking? Are we lacking in community development, or, you know, are the cuts that the police are talking that we're constantly hearing? What do you think is causing this?
Well, I think it's a combination of many factors. The first is that parents have lost control of their kids. And the reason why that is because the government has decided to empower those kids to ensure that parents do not have the relevant level of discipline that they can enforce on their children. I'm the old school, you know, corporate punishment. You know, I went to school, I got spanked. When I misbehaved, the community around me spanked me. And when I got home, I got even bigger spanks. So I think we understood that there was authority between the parents being in charge and the child, not fearful of the parent, but appreciative that there's somebody in control. Now kids are controlling their own affairs, and that's to blame directly based on what the government has done, literally enforcing, empowering these kids to believe that they can do anything at will.
Right, okay. Tete, let me say welcome to JHUK.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you as part of the team.
It's a pleasure.
You know, there are so many Vuyisiwa is raising here that no community development. Ayo is just raising that the reason for this is because of the laws that the government have enacted over the years. What do you think? Do you think this is, you know, with all of that, do we have a drugs issue? Where do you see this coming from?
A couple of points come to mind. First of all, I think you should give unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. There is a part that the government, public policy, has to play in this, in which it has, in my opinion, significantly failed. Then there is another part in which the community itself, parents and so on, have a responsibility. And that responsibility and that challenge is morphing very, very rapidly. The problem is, most of the commentators who talk about this sort of thing ask the wrong questions. If you ask the wrong questions, you'll get the wrong answers. If you get the wrong answers...
What are the right questions?
The right questions is, what is whose responsibility?
Okay.
And the questions have to be motivated not by avoiding shame or casting aside guilt, but at actually finding solutions. What is inevitable is that for those of us who are parents in London right now, the kids who are getting stabbed and killed look like our children. And really, they're but for the grace of God. We must have an experience.
Yeah.
They're but for the grace of God. Go you or I. So it's time now to set aside the game playing and actually address the issues.
Right. Vuyisiwa, I'm coming back to you. You've had a personal experience, as you mentioned there. Over the years, the generation that we have today, you know, your average teenager of today, has known nothing but cuts, as it were. They've had to live through, you know, services being taken away. You're talking about, you mentioned community development. Yeah. Those services were taken away. We know that as Home Office Minister, Mrs. May then also applied a lot of cuts, especially to the police service. Do you think something like, you know, community policing will make a huge difference to the situation?
Well, it can do. It does exist. I mean, I took my son out of East London where we used to live, and
Right.
we've moved literally just to the borders of outside London, just for a sense of peace and security, and to break the cycle that locks young people into activity that is detrimental to their well-being. But you also have to take it from the young person's point of view, Ayo. If they need to survive in this society, they have to, unfortunately, be linked to a group that is powerful, or else they're a target. That is the way my son explained it to me, because I said, I can't lock you in the house, I can't keep you at home, but when you go out, I want you to be safe. But he says, Mum, the only way I can be safe is to associate myself with other people so that no one will mess with me. Now, that's not exactly a gang, but unfortunately for him, he was in a situation where he was just buying chicken and chips, and somebody decided to come along targeting his friend. So he was defending his friend, and he's the one who got stabbed trying to protect his own friend. Now, they still don't know why they were attacked. And it could be that point system thing that people have been reading about. Young people are initiating themselves into adulthood in this manner.
Okay.
That's the gap that's missing. Where is the initiatives for initiation?
Okay,
That's what's missing.
I hear you on that. I'll let you speak in a moment, Tata. Just bear with me. Ayo, you know, she made a direct reference to you there about, you know, what she was saying in all of that. But let me ask this question. Yes, we have this gang culture. We've been speaking about this gang culture for such a long time. But one of the other things that bothers me is that we are so CCTV policed.
Yep.
We are so technically savvy.
Yep.
And yet, we've been discussing this, and it's been on the rise for so many years.
Yep.
Why can't we infiltrate, prevent within the gang culture? What is stopping it?
Well, we shouldn't confuse this word gang. You know, it's for all intents and purposes, this is a gang right now. We are together. So a gang is a collective of people who want to move in a certain direction, speak a certain way,
Well, you heard
have different affiliation.
described it
But hang on a
from
second.
her son.
Absolutely. Then what I would have done, which is what I'm doing with my daughter, for example, is to make sure she fits into the right gang, or try and influence her to ensure that she doesn't go into the wrong gang. With boys, it's slightly different because there's a lot of testosterone involved.
What if you lose influence as a parent? Where do you turn to?
Well, where do you turn to becomes the problem. You can turn to the school, you can turn to social networks, you can actually decide to move the child from the school itself. You physically can move out of the area. There's certain, radical things you can do, or you can go to the police and seek redress. The problem is the kids do not respect the parents, the kids do not respect the authority, and the kids don't respect the police as well, because they expect people should look like them, sound like them, and react and interact with them as they expect that to
I know
be
you
the
say
case.
that, Tet. I know you wanted to say something earlier, but let me let you have your say, because I know that you've also had an experience in this, with this situation as well.
I mean, I'm so pleased to say that the only knives my son has ever seen are the ones in the kitchen and the bayonet that they use at the Air Cadet Corps. Those are the only knives he's ever seen. And this is because mostly he lives in a home counties, we live in a home counties type situation.
You live in a shire somewhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Now,
Well, lucky
my
you.
worry is that this whole thing boils down to an argument about social decay.
Right.
And social decay is based on the kind of, the attitude the government has towards this. If this was a terrorist cell, the government would be in there, they would have pinpointed the people, they would have picked them up, they would have been locked up a long time ago. Somebody, in my opinion, doesn't care enough about this cohort. The second thing is, this is where it comes back to the responsibility of the community itself. When I was a little boy, when I was 14, 15, 16, I was listening to Jimi Hendrix. My parents didn't want me to do that because Jimi Hendrix took drugs and the whole hippie thing was going on.
Yeah.
But there was something that kept me within the tram lines, kept me going to school, doing my A-levels, getting 1 and 2 degrees, okay? All of that glue, the glue that held it together was family admonition. He calls it a gang. The first gang is your family.
Right.
If the family loses charge and control of the child, forget the police are a very poor second stop. The school is a very poor second stop. And so it is the breakdown family decay,
Right.
which in and of itself actually enables kids to actually seek other things, especially when the testosterone is raised.
Time is not allowing us to continue. Vuyisewa, very quickly, your last word on this. Where should we go in terms of solution?
We need to stop talking about the consequences because it's all very dramatic, but it doesn't help young people who might potentially be stabbed in the future. It's really to address the government at the core and go back to what was happening 30 years ago when they had community initiatives specifically designed to absorb young people's energy.
Well, we're going to take a very quick break now, but we have plenty more to discuss. So please join us in a few moments. Hello and welcome back to Journalist Hangout UK. I'm Priscilla Winkbo and I'm pleased to welcome back our panel. Tete Kofi, Ayo Johnson and Vuyisewa Mbongwana are still with me. Just before we went on the break there, you know, we were still very much discussing this, this situation in London. But before we go any further, I'd like us to just have a quick look at a YouTube video.
I've been speaking to one of these young people and the way he spoke to me was like, yeah, man's on the score sheet, innit? Poke, 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 dip, dip, dip. What? Poke, 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 dip, dip, dip. Man's on the score sheet. Talking about he's top of the table. He stabbed 6 people. He stabbed 6 people. He doesn't even know whether he's killed them or not. These are the kind of things that our young people are doing for games. They think it's a game. It's not a game. You're taking people's lives.
Now, that was Chris Preddy there, OBE. Let me come to you, Tete. It is scary to listen to him saying he spoke to a young person who was saying, you know, I need to get on the score sheet. I'm at #1 because I've stabbed 6 people. I mean, we need solutions, surely.
Okay. When a human being can so objectify violence, they're actually in some kind of stage of mental decay. It is very, very abnormal. So it means that the kids who can do this sort of thing lack complete empathy for other people. And it also usually means they don't have very much respect for themselves. That you can't have the one without the other. And this brings me around to the thought of what's happening to the integrity of the family. Because things like empathy, respect for others, respect for life are principally learnt inside a family, a stable family setup. And there are so many pressures keeping black families unstable that it frankly doesn't surprise me. In fact, you can actually predict that this is going to be the outcome of the instability within black families.
Thank you. Ayo, very quickly, is this strictly a black crime, black on black crime, or is it about the reporting that is making it seem like it's black on black crime? Because when we do speak to others within the community, they would tell you that, you know, this happens in every community, but is it at a higher rate within the black community?
It doesn't really matter because this has been amplified as such. I mean, the kids who are dying are black, the kids who are being stabbed are black, the kids who are doing the stabbing apparently are black. So for all intents and purposes, you can classify it, shape it, surround it with the tag black on black. But I think what's key here is the single parenting. For a long time, this government encouraged single parenting by ensuring the benefit system supported those with single kids, those with 2 kids, and pushed the boys.
But it also supported families as well.
Well, not in the same sense, which means that if you were single and you had a kid, you could get a flat. If you were single, you only had 2 kids, you could get even more for bigger flats. And these
but that has been stopped now.
It has, but we're ripping.
That's been gone for like 20 years.
No, hang on. But what's happened is we built a culture of a lot of single parenting who now cannot control their kids, and their kids are coming to hunt us.
Can I just have a quick word about single parent? I'm a single parent, Ayo. I can control my son, Ayo. My job is to teach my son to control himself.
Well, you're not
and you did that very well.
And this is what every parent endeavors to do, so that whatever challenge your child faces, they can find a way of working out a solution. But it's impossible for them to do that if you've got people like you, not just you, but you are representative of a force that is always blaming, oh, you're coming from a single-parent home, you're doomed to fail,
Well,
you're black,
Tete mentioned
you're
earlier on
doomed to
about the
fail.
useful family. You can't have a family with a single parent. You need
Yes.
a
Oh, no,
male.
yes, you can.
do have
And we have
families.
too many of those.
We
And
have
that's
too
the problem.
many families
Absolutely.
with mom and dad, with mom doing all the work. So effectively, it's a single-parent family.
Well, that's
Okay,
why
so
the
there's
kids
a
are out
lot
doing what
wrong
they're
with
doing at the moment.
our family situation.
But there is another dimension. It's a social dynamic that's going place. Actually, if you look at the statistics, black women are more bankable than black men. And for that reason, I mean, in terms of employment, in terms of recruitment, in terms of retention and progression. So as a result, there is a kind of differential glass ceiling between black men and black women. This is a really subtle pressure which actually depresses the likelihood of black families staying together. Now, that is something which black people didn't invent. That is the result of societal values which obstruct the advancement of
Where
black
does Voice
economic
fit into
achievement.
that? How does
I
Voice fit into
don't-
that? She's a single parent.
I don't agree. As a friend narrated to me of his situation, and I'm going to mention it very quickly, where he was in court, alleged fraud. There was a young Caucasian boy and girl in front of him, alleged fraud proved. His was not proved. However, they got away with community sentence and he was sent down to prison. So I think we need to look at those other dynamics as well.
Well, they are. The point is, together, they form a bulk of pressure which actually depresses one gender within the black community over another. And this pressure...
So this takes us back to the government and what the government are failing to do.
This is completely a question of social values and public policy addressing these
so let's
issues.
come back to our young men our young people being killed in the manner that they are. Do we think that zero tolerance is something that needs to be employed? I am going to ask you that very quickly. Should we be employing zero tolerance if you're carrying a knife, if you're found to be carrying a gun? Should it be, because if I should drive through a red light, if I should drive through a bus lane when I'm not supposed to, if I should, drive any park where I'm not supposed to park, I'm going to get a ticket. If I fail to pay that ticket in time, somebody will show up in my home. That is very well policed to collect that money and more. So do we think that zero tolerance is something that we need to look at?
Well, not really. Because,
Not really?
No, because we used to have 3 strikes in the US and you're out. If you're talking about 1 strike and you're out, you're dealing with kids. So even if you had that policy, by the time they get to 18, normally, irrespective of whether they've been to prison or they've served time or they've been in an institution, the law says we treat them slightly kinder because it happened when they were younger. So it's not going to work. We have to speak to kids in ways that they can understand. We have to have role models that they respect themselves. We have to have people like the one on the VT earlier on who can speak their language and can communicate with them.
Okay, I wish we could go on, ladies and gentlemen. I wish we could go on, but unfortunately this week, South Africa lost what I believe is her icon, Mrs. Winnie Mandela.
Yes.
And I think it's a conversation that needs to be had. Let me come to you again first, Vuyisiwa. What was she to you?
A beautiful woman who lived with integrity and did the best she could. That's what she is to me. And the fact that she happened to be married to Nelson is another matter.
Right.
And that's how I look at her, because her legacy is her rootedness to the ground. She never abandoned her cultural roots and her political roots. And she paid a high price for that in terms of how she was perceived in the media and how people are looking at her legacy. But the people she interacted with, remember, they will never forget what Winnie did on the ground, which is not going to be lauded in the Western media at all. But we have that in our own historical experience. And I had the honor of meeting her once. I bumped into her at an airport when my son was about 1. I was carrying him. And I said, I've got to get this snap.
Right.
Very amenable. I could see she was under pressure. Stompie Moketsi had been killed. She was not popular, but she always had respect, and nothing can take that away.
All right, on that note, Stompie had been killed. A lot of people disliked her because of the violence and because of all the things like that unfortunately happened. Ayo.
Well, I don't like to look at Winnie Mandela in that sense as the negative. I like to think of her in the positive as the good things that she did, supporting Nelson Mandela, being a freedom fighter herself, supporting the ANC cause, which she did throughout her entire career. And she was a dedicated female representative for South African politics. So she did extremely well. What I don't like is the negativity, which a lot of Western media, I was on LBC this week, and the first question they asked was all the negative about Winnie, and I said, stop, you know, she's passed, you know, so why focus on that? So I think she was an extraordinary lady, she's an extraordinary thing, and I think Afua wrote a piece on The Guardian this week, a fellow, one of our colleagues here, and she just touched on that, said if Winnie Mandela was white, she would have, it would be a no-brainer. You know, we would have been saying...
Nobody would have remembered her mistakes.
Mistakes, there we go.
But Tete, to you now, she's often compared to Nelson Mandela, her husband. You know, he was seen as a very forgiving man, and she, unfortunately, has not been forgiven by some. She's rather seen more like an angry woman, as it were.
This is the angry black woman thing is an ancient trope. And I'm surprised that in 2018 people still roll it out. But for me, when I look at if she was an artist and you considered her body of work, the matter of Stompie Moketsi, which is still actually under dispute, because many people still say that they were looking for her. Time is upon us.
Your final word on her.
One of the greatest African women in my lifetime.
Thank you. Well, what can I say? She means so many different things to so many of us. For me, she was a hero. Don't forget to follow us on Real JH UK on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. I'm Priscilla Winkle. I'm from the entire team here in London. Thank you for watching JH UK.